What's happening, guys and girls? Acrinator here, and welcome to the 34th episode of the Counseling Pixelated Sheep podcast for the month of June 2018. I am joined, as always, by my partner in crime and co-host for the show, Sirjohnmac I.
Hello!
And today, the stuff that we have for you will be as follows. Bethesda sues Warner Brothers over copyright infringement. Pokemon Go ramping up for trading and friend system update. We have a Where Are They Now for a thing that we talked about way back in the 15th episode of the podcast called PlayVS. And then we do have a channel showcase we'll be getting to later on. So with that being said, let's dive straight into the first article, which is the Bethesda sues Warner Brothers. Oh boy, I heard a pop, so we might be hearing fireworks.
Oh boy.
I might have to jump up and grab my window while John's talking at some point. So basically, what has happened with the Bethesda versus Warner Brothers is that you might remember Fallout Shelter was relatively popular. I think it still is relatively popular in terms of mobile games. Well, apparently the developers, I believe it's a smaller dev that worked for Warner Brothers and Bethesda in this case. Let me just scroll through the article on my phone real quick. Or maybe it was Warner Brothers. Well, either way, it was found out that the new Westworld mobile game that has very similar mechanics to Fallout Shelter has apparently used the original code from Fallout Shelter. Now, the thing is that when Bethesda contracted whatever developers to create Fallout Shelter, it was in the contract that they would retain all the legal rights, copyright and whatnot, for everything to do with the game, the intellectual property and whatnot, and that includes the code of the game. And of course, the Westworld game, as I just said, uses this code as a basis, and it's relatively open and shut case. It is, quote, relatively superficial and cosmetic changes, and Bethesda has called it an unlawful, blatant ripoff of Fallout Shelter that Warner Brothers has committed. So there has been an official court case filed in the in the U.S. District Court. Okay, I thought there was some special name for it. Oh, Warner Brothers Behavior. That's the name of the specific dev, so I guess it's like a Warner Brothers... No, sorry, Behavior is the name of the developer. And that's also the developer that was contracted for both Bethesda and Warner Brothers for these two cases, whereas they really shouldn't have and couldn't have used the original source code for Fallout Shelter because it was Bethesda's property, so they really would have had to remake something from scratch. Which, I mean, yeah, that's on them.
Yeah. At first, I was looking at it as a very, honestly, I was on the side of the developer because I thought it was, a different developer and different code, but, similarities between the two games. Which, if it were just similarities between the two games, the copying, mechanics from another game has gone back to, Doom. But
yeah. I mean, I think the most
original one.
Yeah, and I think the most recent example we've seen of that is PUBG versus Fortnite lately.
Oh god, the PUBG devs are just suing every company they think that they can. That's
a whole different issue, especially because that's based in South Korea, but similar concept.
Yeah, but if it's the same developer using the same code, and although this hasn't been verified, it's just the same bugs that are popping up in the game, but that's fairly good evidence. But yeah, that's a weird kind of self-plagiarism that I really do not like. Even in college, they really discourage you from doing that. If you have two similar courses and you think oh well, I can just plagiarize this one paper that I did, for this other course. It's like, you're really not supposed to do that.
Yeah, right.
Difference being that, like, there's a whole lot more on the line here.
Yeah, per se, because, like, they were contractually obligated to not do what they did.
Yeah.
Or not even contractually obligated, they just didn't have the rights. It wasn't theirs.
Yeah, they did work for another company, and that work, like, transfers out of their rights to the company that they did the work for.
Yeah, and as of yet, Bethesda has not been able to specifically confirm that it is the actual code, but because of the way it behaves and it has the exact same bugs given certain inputs and whatnot, because of course Bethesda games all have to have bugs regardless of whether Bethesda develops. They do love their bugs, but now that a court case has actually been filed, it'll be very easy for them to get a warrant to actually take a look at the code and compare and contrast. And I can imagine it's going to be extremely similar, especially when you get to the first couple lines of code. It's all going to be probably verbatim.
Yeah, like, once they get to look over the source code, it's going to be Control-C, Control-F, Control-V. Oh, hey, look at all of that, like, exact matching that this code is doing with the other code.
Yeah. It is funny, though, that they sort of, like, had the audacity, especially to do something like that against Bethesda, who, like, has been known in the past to go after small cases like this. I mean, like, just look at the modding community when that whole thing blew up. Like, no other big developer like them would really care, aside from maybe Blizzard. And it would have to be, like, the Blizzard side of Activision Blizzard, you know? As opposed to, like, if they did this to, like, EA or Ubisoft or fucking Activision, like, they would never know.
I mean, look at the whole thing that happened with Scrolls.
Oh, Jesus.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah. That was, like, what, 2014?
Maybe. $2012?
Really?
Jesus!
God. I was trying to be conservative in my estimate.
That was spring 2012.
Oh,
jeez.
God. Freaking graduated from... No, wait, I graduated from high school the next year. Holy shit. Damn.
And there's stuff even earlier than, like... There's stuff from fall 2011 from that whole thing. The getting it settled was spring 2012. But, man, like, the balls that you have to
yeah, right.
Kind of try to swindle a company like this with a property like that out of work.
It's like, I don't even know. It's relatively open and shut. It's just funny and worth mentioning as, like, the audacity that this small-time developer had. And you almost know that Warner Brothers didn't know. You know? Like, they don't pay attention enough if the Arkham games weren't evident enough. Like, they don't pay attention to the industry in the slightest.
Yeah, as evidenced by the fact that it's Bethesda bringing this up instead of Warner Brothers.
Yeah, well, you know damn well if Warner Brothers did figure it out, which they never would have without someone else pointing it out, but even if they did, they wouldn't fucking care. Not only because they're on the side that actually benefits from it, just because they don't care in general.
Yeah.
Like, they would have found some weird, convoluted way. However, Warner Brothers is getting sued, as well as Behavior. Because, yes, the very first line in this article, which is part of the update, because this article was technically released when Bethesda was just claiming that they were going to, and probably in the process of filing a lawsuit, whereas the update came, it is literally like a paragraph saying that they did in fact file it, and it is filed against both Warner Brothers and Behavior. And I can imagine this is going to be a relatively short case and a very easy win for them.
Yeah.
I can't imagine Bethesda would pursue this if they damn well didn't have the contract with Behavior saying, like, this is our property.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was totally going to go to the side of the developer, because, like, that's the thing about game development, is, like, so much of it is just kind of iterating on the previous design, because if it were, like, Fallout Shelter, but, like, with the theme of Westworld and improvements and an actual evolution of the genre that Fallout Shelter kind of introduced, then that would be great. But if it's just a carbon copy, then that's stagnation. That should be, de-incentivized.
It should be shunned by players, but more so, they kind of had this coming. They had no right.
Yeah,
literally.
And even if they had gone, if they had done the work that they were paid for, and at least, like, improved upon the previous formula, like, that would be great. Like, that's all they had to do, is do the work that they were paid for, and they failed to do that.
Yeah, like, I can't imagine that Behavior is going to be around very much longer after this. Just because it's like, first off, fucking lawsuit against Bethesda, but who knows for how much money and how many millions Bethesda is probably going to sue them for. Probably however successful Westworld is. Or rather, this game of Westworld is, not necessarily the show. But even more so, because now very few developers would want to hire someone like Behavior, and potentially not even the more scummy publishers out there, I suppose, like the EAs, like the Ubisofts, just because even they try to avoid bad publicity when it's not directly tied to them. So, hard to say. But I can imagine this will be relatively fast, other than however long it takes for the court to actually deal with it.
Like, Bethesda's going to be able to sue them for the 3 laptops that they used to code on and the 2 lawn chairs that they used to sit on.
Pretty much. I don't actually know much about Behavior, but a quick Google search didn't really bring much up, so...
I've never heard of them.
Yeah, so RIP. And with that, I think we've bled that dry, just as they've bled themselves dry. So I guess we can move on to the next article, which is Pokemon Go. Specifically, the article that I found was talking about the Pokemon Go updates that they want to have for trading and a friend system revamp. But more so, I feel like what we can talk about here is just the fact that people are still fucking playing this game. Like... It is, I believe, number 4 on the top grossing charts of all apps for Android. Like, that's kind of impressive for a, quote, dead game. And it gives us a reason to continue to talk about this fucking game that we've talked about for God knows how long. But, like, I actually re-downloaded the game just to see, like, what it was like. And what improvements they've made, because I've heard a lot about, you know, like, they've added new generations. I believe they're up to Gen 3 currently, possibly Gen 4, I'm not entirely sure. I didn't see that many Pokemon. Granted, they still have the issue of Pokemon not really spawning in areas that are not populated. I think it does need to be based around like where you are, but also it needs to be based around who's playing. So it needs to be based around the individual player connected to the server. So, like, Pokemon in the world should be generated around the player, you know, so you don't have to waste server space, computing, a fucking random-ass Pokemon in, like, the Siberian tundra. You know? Like, you just don't need to do that. I know damn well that's exactly what their servers are doing. I bet if someone went to fucking the North Pole, they'd find something. Because that's the way this game fucking works. And that's the way their servers seem to work at the very least. However, I will say that the menu UI looked a lot better. They did change some ways with how the currency works and micromanaging that. I still technically have it installed, but it's probably going to be uninstalled by the end of this week, just because I haven't gone on it since like yesterday when I installed it, just to be like, is this game like still shit or what? And it kind of still is, to be honest. Like, there's no incentive to play it unless you live in like a major city, you know. And it's like, I mean, hell, we're right nearby a relatively like medium to small sized city, you know, about 100,000 people, and there's really not much to do. Like, you can't really find shit, you know. And I do blame the devs for that, really. It's just like, interesting concept, very niche. The vast majority of the world will not be able to enjoy this, despite the fact that when this first came out, the vast majority of the world tried to enjoy this. They do have something of a tracking system now, but it's only for select few. So like, you can see that, oh, there's some Pokemon over by like this Pokestop or this gym, you know, and it's like, if you go here, you're likely to find them. That's cool, but you still have the issue of like not being able to immediately know where they are. I'm not going on a wild goose chase in a, you know, two square mile radius to find a fucking Pikachu, you know? Like, just show me where they are in the world. I can walk there and get it, because you still have to do the walking. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's unnecessary.
The search and discover aspect is nice, and maybe there'd be an option to, like, if you really didn't want to, but I feel like there should be the option, because it doesn't really take away the difficulty when you think about it. It's like, it takes away a little bit of frustration, but you have to walk effectively to the same location regardless. It's just, are you going directly there? Are you going, you know, are you doing it with purpose, or are you doing it saying, you know, Marco Polo? Like, and that's really a big frustration, at least for me. And I can see for a lot of different players as well, as the tracking was I think that was the big thing that eventually killed this game. And it's nice to see that they're updating it still, but looking at the core aspect of the game, and this is really the main discussion I wanted to have with this, just using this article as a catalyst for this conversation, is I don't think the game's worth it. You know, I don't think it really deserves that much success, and thankfully it's not really getting that much success. And I say thankfully kind of sadistically, because it's like, I disagree with the design philosophy. And I don't like seeing that sort of design philosophy succeed, because it's so, not even like ignorant, it's arrogant, because they know damn well what the players wanted. And I say wanted because, well, you went from, what, 25 million players at its height to about 150,000 nowadays, which is still a lot. That's putting it at the top of the charts, but, you know, it's not the top of the charts. It's not record-breaking like it used to be, and I don't think it deserves to be anymore. But, I don't know. You played Go for quite a while as well, John. So what's your take on this?
You know, like, for a good month or two, I had Pokemon Go on my phone because, like, everyone did right after launch. And I live in a very rural area, and even, like, there was very little to catch. But when I did catch something, it was very exciting. And the first time I, like, actually went into even a small town with my phone and just went to a Pokemon Go beacon, whatever those are called, I forget. And, like, got some items and got a bunch of Pokemon that I'd never seen. That was like a bit of excitement, but it very quickly wore off because there was nothing to do with the Pokemon once I had them.
Yeah.
Like, these things needed to be in the game from launch for people to still have interest 2 years on.
Yeah, and I think they would have needed to have a better battle system. They would have needed to have a better gym system. kind of ties into the battle system. Like, there's so many things that they changed about the Pokemon formula that they didn't need to. The search and discover and capture, that, like, you know, gotta catch them all, that much was okay. It was bearable. But I feel like a lot of things compiled into just, like, this big shit show.
The things that people played Pokemon for either were not there or were just barely there, and the things that it added were very lackluster.
Yeah.
Once, like, the biggest accomplishment you could ever have is taking over a gym, and that, unless you're so super hardcore into the game, you've got, like, a bunch of different Pokemon that you can put on there. Maybe you've got some, like, friends who can contribute theirs as well. Then it's, like, not even going to last for very long.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the big issues as well, not just the, you know, the tracking, but I feel like the combat system is, like, extremely flawed, because it still has, like, the stupid tapping thing and, like, swipe to dodge, and it's like, what are you doing? You had, like, definitively one of the most successful turn-based RPGs in existence, and you decided not to go with that? Like, and not only that, but, like, the leveling system was weird, because you could have, like, a fucking Pidgey that was stronger than, like, a Dragonite, you know?
Yeah, like, Skyrim got ported to the phone more faithfully than Pokemon, and that is completely unacceptable. Pokemon was literally made to be a mobile game.
Yeah.
And not even like adding in touch screens. Like, I played Pokemon on my friggin' Game Boy Color, and it kept my attention longer than Pokemon Go.
Yeah, and actually one thing that's very interesting to me, and I wonder if they're still going to try to do this, is one of the things they promised very, very, very early on in Pokemon Go's development, like this is well before even the alpha testing, and you might remember talking about this, John, is that they had the idea to allow people to port the Pokemon from their mobile to the actual main franchise.
Oh my god, yes!
I don't know if that's something they're still working on or what, but, like, that would be one hell of a logistical nightmare, as well as just, like, especially, God, I haven't played any of the main franchise games in, God, forever, since Black and White 2 was the last gen I got, because I really didn't want to buy a 3DS to play, I believe it was X and Y?
Black and White 1 here.
Yeah. And it's like, I just didn't want to keep buying a new DS like every 3 fucking months. As it turns out, that was like the last gen of DS. So I could have and been fine with it, but, like, well, then I would have had to buy a Switch, but either way. It's like, there's so many other things that I can play, and if I really wanted to, I could just download an emulator. Fuck Nintendo and their stupid policies. But, like, I don't know.
I mean, I think if you own a copy of the,
Man, I own multiple copies of various generations. I have I have 2 copies of the original red and blue. Like, I have yellow, I have fucking gold, pearl, emerald, ruby, and sapphire. Fucking, like, I all the way up to Black and White 2, I had at least one of every single gen.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. Plus, there's so many other games that I, like, still haven't played. Like, I have Final Fantasies 7, 8, and 9 in my Steam library that I've never even installed. So, or, like, The Witcher 3, or the more recent Mad Max game that you fucking gifted me forever ago. You know, plus I still have, like, the second chapter of Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, which that was, like, a 60-hour game, the first one. I'm, like, 4 hours into that. Probably not even that much. So it's like, I just have so many other games that I could be playing. Many of them turn-based RPGs, so I don't know. And I think that's really just the best way to put this entire Pokemon Go conundrum is, like, there's so much else that you could be doing, not just on mobile, but in general. You know, it's like, why... The game encourages you to get up and go out, but why does it not allow you to Alt-Tab and still have the game open? Or, like, close the app and it still be open? Because literally every fitness app out there on the Android and Apple market will do that. You can have the app closed and it'll still track you as long as you have your location set up. Pokemon Go doesn't do that, and I think that's honestly probably the biggest flaw, because you don't want to be standing there with your, phone unlocked, staring at your phone. It's like that's literally defeating the purpose of what Nintendo wanted with this game. They wanted people to get up and be active and like interact with others instead of staring at their phone, because that's the only way they can play the game.
Yeah, it's very admirable what they tried to do, but like at the end of the day, the execution does not do credit to their intention.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, like you said, like having to wait for it to load every single time, and even when I do, it's I haven't had it installed in months, but the last time I did, it would take like a minute to open, and then sometimes it wouldn't even open, it would just like crash. And that's the only time I've ever had an app crash. It
is better nowadays. Like, I haven't seen it crash, and it does open up in about 30 seconds, so it's about cut in half, but it's still like, take eggs for example. That was a huge aspect of the game, was that's how you got a lot of Pokemon, like a lot of rare Pokemon. It's like you wanted a Dragonite, you were more than likely to find a Dratini from an egg, but you couldn't hatch the eggs unless you had the phone open and unlocked. So it's like first off, you're draining your phone's battery by doing that instantaneously. I can't believe that they didn't set that up. Like that's something that I still can't believe that they don't have set up. But I don't know, they deserve every bit of failure they've earned, which unfortunately isn't quite enough. But it's sad what the game could have been. Like, we all could have been still playing it to this day, and really no one is, aside from a select few people in very, very large cities with, if you reach a niche audience in like New York City, which is, a city of like 10 million people, just about, that's still like a couple 100,000, which is effectively their player base.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Not worth anyone's time, really, and it may never be, despite all their updates.
Yeah, if we're talking about like wasted potential, this and No Man's Sky are kind of very close neighbors.
See, at least No Man's Sky, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but at least No Man's Sky is working on its fundamental flaws. Pokemon Go is just piling shiny stuff on top of a pile of shit.
Yeah, like, I can look at No Man's Sky in the state that it's in right now and say, like, this has made definitive improvements towards the game that it was trying to be originally.
Yeah.
It is... I have to make some leaps to say that about Pokemon Go.
I can't say that about Pokemon Go.
And the only thing that I can even, like, kind of say about Pokemon Go that it's added to the Pokemon universe is, like, okay, you've got some 3D models for, like, the first 2 generations of Pokemon. People on DeviantArt have done that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I don't know. I think to avoid any more frustration with this shit show, we can move on.
Yeah.
So, where are they now? This, like I said, we talked about originally in the 15th episode of the Kind of Pixelated Sheep podcast, which we are now on episode 34, so quite a while ago, but, yeah, just shy of 2 years ago, I think. We talked about this thing called PlayVS, where originally, and I say originally because I'll get to that in a second, originally this was a website where people could bet on themselves to play against others in closed-circuit small tournaments / matches in certain kinds of games, primarily FPS, sports, and MOBAs. And nowadays, it is entirely different. I actually found this in the backlog of Pixelated Sheep stuff, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, I wonder what the hell that was, because I remember back in the day we were talking and we had no idea what the hell they were actually trying to do because it was so very vague. What it seemed like originally was you logged onto the website and you basically looked for others who were playing the same game, and you would, bet however much money. They would also bet however much money that you would win, and if you won, you'd get a little bit of money. I remember we may have questioned the legality of this, depending on what country you're in, because certain European countries are very hard to crack down on that sort of gambling. The US in particular will, if it's not taxable, though I could imagine they would make it taxable. However, when I went back to this topic and this website company, whatever you want to call it in particular, they seemed to have completely shifted their focus. It's still on esports. However, apparently they want to set up a high school esports league with the same genres of games, so primarily MOBAs, sports, and what was the other one I said? Either way, with the three genres of games that I said before, MOBAs, sports, and fighting games. Why they wouldn't try to get some larger games like, battle royales, or say FPSs like Overwatch and Call of Duty. I don't know if Halo still has a big scene like that, but I know Call of Duty and Overwatch do, and Counter-Strike. However, a shooter game might actually be more difficult to get into a high school, just because of the logistics of, like, some of those kids might not be old enough to play those games legally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess they are going to safer out by just fighting games where, as long as they're doing like Street Fighter as opposed to like Mortal Kombat, where Mortal Kombat probably has, or like Tekken, I believe, is still around possibly, and they are always a little bit less risque. I say that, and they had like some of the female characters, man, who were quite risque in their own rights, but different, less gore, more raunchiness, I guess. I don't know. But they are trying to, and they actually have a contract with, I forget the name or the acronym of the association, but it is the National Federation State High School Associations Partners, something along those lines, where basically that is a giant organization, national organization, that is trying to set up high school esports, and potentially, because certain colleges are looking into esports as well, and some colleges, like I believe there's one in South Carolina, one of the Carolinas, that's actually like really big in esports. Like literally any video game they probably have an esport for. Like they actually had like one or two kids picked up by contenders teams in Overwatch. I remember hearing about that. I believe I forget the names of the players, but they were on like contenders teams that were actually successful. So you have that sort of stuff. So you have, especially with these more structured esports leagues coming into the fray, like Overwatch, like I believe Fortnite was trying to do something. So you have these leagues that actually have a real structure to them, and salaries for, at the very least, for Overwatch. I can imagine that'll soon shift as well for more leagues. But I don't actually know how successful it'll be. Like the website itself allowed you to register as like 3 different things. It was players, analysts, and then I forget what the hell their term was, but it was essentially recruiters. So you could sign up as like an analyst / coach or whatever. You could sign up as a player. You could sign up as a recruiter if you were someone working with like a college esports team to, possibly get these kids a scholarship right out of high school. Although in the world of esports, it has shown to be more useful to just go straight in. Like the Overwatch League, the minimum age is 18. You have kids like Sinatra and basically the half of the fucking San Francisco Shocks roster coming straight out of high school. Like I believe Sinatra and like, what's his face? Sleepy? Or Super? Yeah, I think Super. And Architect, I believe, had like just graduated high school recently. So you have kids like that coming out of. So it begs the question how useful these are, especially since, like, hell, sticking to Overwatch, you have contenders where the minimum age is 16, and you could make a decent living there, especially if you get into an academy team like Toronto Esports, like Fusion University, like NRG Esports, like what was the other one? Gladiators Legion. Those are the big four that I can think of. I think Dynasty and NYXL also have teams, but they didn't really have that strong of a showing. I think the British Hurricane had a pretty good showing. Like, I think New York in particular, the only good player on that team was Flower. And it's like, he's already kind of established. He already has a contract with New York when he turns 18, which I think is Season 2. So, I don't know. It's like, it's cool that they're trying to do this, but it makes me wonder how many kids in high school and how many high schools will want to participate in this. Of course, there's going to be some, especially in the regions where certain colleges nearby already have an established esports organization, because colleges are willing to do fucking anything to make it, ends meet, despite the fact that most of them do make ends meet, and then some. But other than that, like, hell, the high school I went to, I just can't see them getting involved in this. I can see the kids, wanting to get involved in this sort of stuff, but they'd really just, in Overwatch's case, because that's the game that I think both of us know best, John and I, it would just be easier for kids in our area to just grind up the ladder. Make top 500, make probably the top fifth of top 500. You really have to, from what I've seen, contenders and the Overwatch League in particular, you need to really be in like the top 100 for your region to actually have a chance of like being as good as the pros. So I don't know how. What are your thoughts on this? I've been rambling on this for a while.
I mean, it's definitely a good idea. It's like, it's not the early 2000s anymore. Video games are here to stay. If you can make video games into a positive thing, make it into like teamwork and like a kind of community thing, even if that community is like your classmates, that's great. That, and with this organization coming from like a background of like a gambling thing into an actual legitimate esports thing, that's one hell of a heel-face turn.
Yeah, right. Like I was really caught off guard when I saw that. I was like, wait, they're doing what now? And I had to look to see like if it was the exact same organization, and it is in fact. So definitely more commendable what they're trying to do. Not sure how successful it'll be. However, there are supposedly 20,000 high schools across the country that are working together with the organization that they have a contract with, so maybe it'll be successful. Who's to say? Esports is a considerably fast-growing industry, as well as gaming in general. I think high school will be a much more difficult market to break into as opposed to college, because they're kids. You have a lot stricter logistics and regulations to work around, as opposed to college kids, where they're essentially all adults. So you can do a lot more because they can give consent for themselves, whereas high school, it's like you kind of have to work around the parents and what they're allowing and God knows what, So I feel like, aside from those rare occasions where you have someone like Barcode, that like 14, 15-year-old girl who's consistently like GM top 500 in Overwatch, you're not gonna get these like top tier players, and people like Barcode, I believe she's probably going to be one of the first few female players, obviously Kyuri's the first in Overwatch League, but I think if the league sticks around and she's still into the game by the time she turns 18, she can easily be a really good flex DPS player for some random team. So it's like, that's someone who is actually still in high school and like ridiculously good and could be pro at this moment because she already plays with the pros on ladder,
Yeah.
But I feel like the average level of play you'd see is possibly like plat to diamond level play. And we're all in relation to Overwatch, mind you, so just like scale that to whatever game if you don't follow Overwatch. But like maybe above average play, but my guess is probably even lower than that, probably closer to gold to plat. Maybe college, you have better reactions, you're smarter, you're probably going to get closer to like plat to diamond, maybe even masters level play, depending on the college you're playing at. I feel like the college that I went to would probably find like maybe a few diamond players mixed in with mostly plats and golds and silvers. So it's hard to say.
Another thing about, like, I guess just esports in general is that you look at, like, high school or college level football and soccer, and you need teamwork in conjunction with, like, a good amount of physical prowess.
Yeah.
But, like, esports, you need that teamwork with a good amount of, like, intelligence and just, like, common sense. And
a little bit of physical prowess just in terms of mechanics, but depending on the kind of player you are, because if you're like, I don't know, if you're like Fleta, where you just have like god tier mechanics, as opposed to like Jaehong on Seoul Dynasty, where he's not necessarily the best at mechanics, but he's so fucking smart that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends. There's more room for, having the muscle memory versus having the smarts. But it definitely is less physical. I get what you were saying, yeah.
But, like, my point is that in the NFL or in a college-level football game, you're never going to see a player roll out on a wheelchair.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. In esports, that's, like, a legitimate possibility. And honestly, like, there's nothing that stops someone who has a physical disability like that from being good at esports. And
yeah, so long as they have control of the right parts of their body, then yeah, as long as they're like, they can control their arms.
Yeah, it's esports is a way to include people like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at like Owl, which is the top of the top, and you see a player like Giguri, who is female. And what other sports league has a female player in the top of the top playing alongside male players? Yeah. It's like every other sports league is like divided.
Yeah, although that, if you're talking like soccer or football, I guess, or like American football, or even like baseball or basketball, that kind of does have to be the case because that's more physical and the physical capabilities of the genders are completely different, whereas esports allows for more co-ed play because there is no biological barrier to stop you there, whereas like you legitimately can't have, in like football's case, you can't have like females on the field. They will die because you're going up against these like 6 foot 300-pound beasts, basically, and it doesn't matter how bulky a female's gonna get, she can't get that bulky. And she's very unlikely to take that hit. So it's like, it's rough as opposed to just having a, separate leagues for those kinds of things. Same thing with basketball, although less bulky, but, you have very large differences that can lead to serious injuries or worse, as opposed to esports where, like you said, Giguri can be one of the better divas in the league, one of the better Zaryas in the league, especially one of the better Zaryas. I feel like she's had a subpar diva, but I think that's just because of her team. Diva really suffers with the team. I feel like she'll be one of the very few players that sticks around with the Dragons for Season 2. I think like her, Dia, and maybe Sky, and maybe a few others, but like those two in particular, her and Dia, are like should stay with the Dragons for Season 2. Everyone else can just like lose their job because they all suck. Yeah.
I feel really bad about that, but I'm still laughing.
They're not only the losingest team in professional sports history, it's still going.
Yeah.
And like there have been moments where like Giguri and Dia are carrying that team with like Sky and Otto. Otto's another one that should stay. It's like And then they'll fucking switch Otto out for Damon, I think, and it's like, Damon's really not doing that good. I think he's one of the Koreans they brought in. And it's like, he's just not doing that good. Like, keep the top performers. And it's scummy to say that, because you want to have some faith to your team, but like, fuck, man. You're 0-40, negative 120 map differential. That is the only team in Overwatch League history that has achieved a triple-digit map score. Even the New York Excelsior, I believe, was like plus 89 or something. Like, even they couldn't get fucking... Like, let me check. Hold on, I have the mobile app if it'll load. Like, yeah, New York Excelsior has the highest map differential at plus 83. Shanghai Dragons, negative 120. The next lowest is negative 78 with Florida. Like, come on, man. That's just,
Yeah.
And they already kicked quite a few of their players. I mean, they benched, like, what, 3 of them? Because they weren't taking practice seriously anymore or something like that? Like, it was like, who is it? Zushu, Roshan, and someone else? I think Roshan, or maybe not Roshan, I'm not entirely sure. It's just nice that they don't have fucking Roshan in there as main tank anymore, although Fearless isn't doing that good. I'm shocked that they keep playing 5 King and altering.
Yeah.
They're so bad. And then you have Free Feel on the Zenyatta, and it's like, he'll just trance randomly, and you're like, what are you doing?
Oh, hey, a Junkrat ult trance blocks that, right?
It's like, oh look, Deadeye, trance. It's like, brilliant. Please. Yeah.
Free Feel, I'm sorry if you're watching this, you're a better Zenyatta than I am.
That's the thing, man, is like, sometimes I'd watch, not just the Dragons, but like sometimes I'd watch some of these players and I'm like, legitimately like, damn, John is a better Lucio than them. Like... Like, legit, fucking in the preseason, when Boston was facing the Dragons, and they were in map 5 on Lijiang Tower, fucking Kelix was on Lucio, and I was legit like, oh my god, John would do a better job. Like, legitimately. Because you are more annoying and more agile. Like, he was barely wall riding. Fucking Undead as Soldier, like, just pinged him down like that, and I was like, dude, come on. Like, I know he's supposed to be known for his Lucio play, but he's supposed to be known for his Lucio play. Like, he hasn't had a good showing once as Lucio, and then he's like one of the best Mercies in the league. It's like, come on. You're really gonna play Lucio right now? You're basically throwing.
There are, like, literally 2 modes for Lucio. Either you're healing, your support Lucio, and you're with your tanks and DPS and such, and healing. Or your offense annoying Lucio, and all you have to do is be at a different sight line than the DPS on their team, or whoever on their team is getting harassed by your DPS.
It's like...
And that's it!
It's like, if you want to go aggro, though, you have to actually be annoying. You can't just sit there and, like, jump. Like,
yeah.
You kind of need to fucking do something. But, yeah, I can imagine we would see lots worse or possibly better play from high school kids. Hard to say. From those rare few, unfortunately I don't follow sports, so I couldn't come up with a good analogy. But I mean, Barcode herself is one of the very few cases where that would be. Sinatra, Flower, those are high school kids technically still. You know? So... it'll be interesting to see if this high school league does take off. It'll be really cool if someday, you know, I can go, you know, I don't know, to the local TV stations on cable and watch fucking X high school play, like, you know, the high school from across the town or whatever, in Overwatch or Counter-Strike or whatever. Because no one fucking cares about football. My high school in particular fucking sucked at football, so...
Yeah.
Anyways, you want to move on to the last bit?
Yeah, sure.
This one I feel like will be a little bit shorter, but it is a channel showcase, so I'll give it my all, because I do love this segment. I feel like it's a nice thing when you can give a spotlight to another channel, especially one that's doing good So this channel is called Psychotrip. He has about 4,100 to 4,000 subscribers. He is, the best way to describe his style, because it varies, is mostly gaming journalism. He focuses mostly on gaming, but there are some geek culture things. And his style of journalism has actually switched a lot depending on video to video. Mostly including, oh god, what is it? Like, probably the best way to describe it is more investigative journalism, more analytical journalism, like, say, what I do with, like, Paradoxical Ramblings, or say what, like, Total Biscuit does, where it's more like criticism, critique. He'll also do that, more like reviews, although I've seen less of those lately. And then he also does a lot of the stereotypical gaming journalism stuff, where it's like, oh, this happened, here's, you know, a bulleted list of, like, all the updates that were brought to this particular game. And it's like probably the lowest common denominator for gaming journalism, if I'm being honest. But I mean, hell, I guess it needs to get out there somehow. But I think where this guy's content really shines is when he does the more critical analysis, whether it be a more formal review or he's just talking about this and that. I think I found him through a video where he was discussing why he doesn't like when humans are used in games. And it was a very interesting video essay, and I think he was talking about Skyrim at the time, or possibly it was World of Warcraft. Could have been talking about both for all I know. And actually, he had a more recent video, I think a month or two ago, about why he always returns to World of Warcraft and why it just is consistently one of the better MMOs, despite, you know, like many MMO junkies out there, they'll have a period where they just, like, switch. Or maybe it's not a period, maybe it's just their fucking lifestyle, because I have seen people like that, where they'll just, you know, flip from MMO to MMO, and they'll always end up coming back to WoW. And I think his analysis is relatively good. His presentation is very good if you find some of his older videos. His audio in particular isn't maybe the best, but generally he has his shit together. He also got a few months ago when I first found his channel, I found that he had advertised, like, an actual article that he had written. So I think at one point in time, perhaps, maybe he stopped since then, but he was going for a more pen and paper style of journalism. It might have just been on, like, a personal blog, but it looked like a more official website with, you know, a smaller website. It wasn't like Polygon or Kotaku or, you know, GameSpot or The Verge or anything like that. But it did seem like an aggregator for smaller journalists. I can't find it for the life of me now. I'll attempt to look, but I wouldn't be shocked if I can't find it, and it's just not in the description. At the very least, his YouTube channel is, and that's possibly one thing that I would recommend to him, is if he's still doing, like, the pen and paper journalism per se, definitely advertise that more. It's like nothing to be ashamed of, because the, like, 2 articles that I found on that website by him were actually well done. They weren't like the standard, you know, top 10 games released this month, you know, that you always see. It was actual, like, analysis and discussion and review, which I think the world needs more of nowadays, especially with the loss in the critique community as of late, the obvious one. We can always use more of that and less of the, you know, top 10 favorite games to look out for this month. It's like, that's great and all, but this podcast needs more to talk about.
Yeah.
That's basically what I'm saying. Generally, I do find that the kinds of articles that we try to find to talk about during the podcast, though, are, like, the better articles, which I will address that more so in a way next week for the Week of Madness on Friday. But more discussion on that when that happens, and also Sunday before this upcoming Sunday when I do the pre-Week of Madness rundown to explain what's going to happen. I know I sent you the channel link, John. I don't know if you had enough time to actually look at any of the videos.
I watched a little bit, skipped through a little bit of one video, and before watching, I hadn't, like, seen how many subscribers were actually on this channel, and I saw the production value, and the quality is good, and I was like, okay, what is this channel like 30K subscribers or something like that. No, it's 4K. And it's like the really good production value for how many subscribers there are.
Yeah, that's a common theme with smaller-ish channels, is like you kind of have to have really good production value or get extremely lucky, or both, to get that big break.
Yeah.
Or just like be grinding it out since like 2010, you know? So there is a little bit of YouTube meta discussion to be had there for another time. But yeah, I think the quality of his stuff is really good. It doesn't come out, he doesn't put out a video that often. It's usually every couple of weeks, so maybe like once a month, but it's usually worth watching. I think more recently his videos have been like E3 vlogs, which, I mean, those are skippable. In all honesty, no one really cares. I doubt that the people making them really care that much. But it's content. It keeps you, quote, relevant in the YouTube algorithm, so do whatever you feel like you gotta do. But in the long run, I think his analysis and discussion videos are definitely worth checking out. Maybe not so much the videos that, where it's like I said before, where it's just like a bulleted list of here's things that happen, because you could probably figure those things out by like the developer's Twitter, you know, as opposed to some random YouTuber. But I have seen a lot of those kinds of YouTubers in the gaming sphere go by the wayside for the most part, because the very hardcore, like, tuned-in audience has started to get away from that. I think for the better, because it's such a lowest common denominator kind of content. It's like, there's very little you can add there. I mean, you can try to add your commentary, but that sort of goes into the realm of something else. And then you sort of ask yourself, do I really need to recap everything that I'm talking about, or just assume that people already know? You know, and give like a basic understanding instead of like a whole list of here's what I'm going to be talking about and here's my opinion. You know, there's multiple approaches to like make that your own. And fortunately, in my opinion, for Psychotrip's content, he's done a lot less of that lately. I don't know if that's just like, the hell was that? Not sure if that was a siren or what, but anyways. Yeah, for Psychotrip's content in particular, I'm not sure if that's like something that he consciously decided or if it's just something that he hasn't been focusing on lately, but I think the content he's been doing lately, aside from the vlogs, has been the better of his content to showcase. So if you do go to his channel, the more recent stuff, including the WoW video that I talked about, or the MMO video, I guess, is higher in quality. So yeah, go check him out.
Yeah.
Considerably larger than this channel, and deservingly so, if you ask me. He also has like some investigative journalism stuff about like this Kanye quest. And I won't go too far into it, but it's like, I've watched a few of his videos on it, and he seemed to have gone like really deep down the rabbit hole, and I think that stuff is really interesting. I can respect that, because I sort of get a similar thrill when I make my unanswered videos. Feels like I'm going down the rabbit hole, so definitely that sort of stuff is also worth watching. I think if you wanted to do more of that investigative kind of journalism, however, it is sometimes difficult to find a topic to talk about for that, so then you run into the issue of like, you go months without posting anything because you just don't have anything. But his backlog of those videos in particular for that topic, the Kanye Quest's mystery, I guess, is actually pretty interesting. Probably some of his best stuff, aside from the a few odd video essays here and there. So yeah, that's all I really got. Do you have anything else to say, John?
Not really.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed this month's podcast, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more like it, maybe even subscribe. It comes out at the usually in the last 10 days of every month. Usually in the last 5 days of every month, because I procrastinate like shit. Be sure to check out John's channel and whatnot. That'll all be in links in the description below, as well as all the references used for this podcast, or as many as I could find in terms of anything that I might have referenced offhandedly, but I usually say if I may or may not find something. Have any closing statements, John?
My keypad has more dust on it than the rest of my keyboard.
Well, what the fuck? Anyways, that's all the time we've got for today. So until next time, don't die.